Hey guys, I'm here to talk to you guys about ACE Personal Training Test. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the things that I studied, where I focused a lot on some study tips, the materials I bought, and the day of the test even. Um, I actually bought all of my materials through ACE. I'm a military wife, so I got to use some of my tuition money that is provided to military wives to buy all of my ACE stuff, which was great. So if you're a military wife, take advantage of that money. It's free. It's free money to further your education and get a job that you really enjoy. So personal training manual is the biggest thing you can buy. This thing, I read it front to back, every single page. I've read some pages more than others repeatedly. You can tell by all of my wonderful sticky notes and my, paper clips at the top that I definitely focused on some areas a lot more than others, but I did read every single word in this book. I think it's important to read this book. It may seem crazy, but I just broke it up. I set myself a goal. I'm going to take my test by this point, so I need to have this book read by this point, and I just read, 10, 12 pages a night, and it wasn't that bad. But this book is definitely important to get. For sure, get this book. I also got The Essentials of Exercise Science for Fitness Professionals. I did read every word of this book. I think you could do without it. It's super, super informative. It goes into great, great, great detail on some things. A lot of it I think is important, but maybe not to the extreme level that they took it. I felt like I was in med school, not studying for my personal training exam. I have my biology degree, and some of the stuff in here, I don't even know if my biology classes in college went into this detail. It talks about hormones and things that are super important for the fitness professional, but not for the test. It's definitely something that I will keep around for reference later down the road, but as far as the test, I would focus on the personal training manual the most. I also got the study companion. I did use this quite a bit. Pretty much it summarizes the chapters, and then it gives you some quizzes and review questions to look over after every chapter. So normally I would finish a chapter and then I'd look at the review questions, and if I couldn't answer the review questions pretty much 100% all the way through, I either touched up on the chapter again or I went back and reread some stuff. So it does break the chapters down really, really well for you. Most of the questions in here, the review questions, are stuff you should have got out of the chapter, and if you didn't, you really need to go back and look at it. So some other things that I did, they did have some little worksheets that you could print out on ACE. I took great advantage of those. I knew most of my muscles and insertion points and things, but touching up on them was great. So I printed them out and I filled them out just so I knew where they were. It definitely helps. On the test, they don't necessarily ask, where is a certain muscle. They don't really ask for that, but they will ask you, this muscle is super tight. What do you do to strengthen it, and what do you do to stretch it? It talks a lot about how to counteract things. So, if you have a weak muscle here, what muscles are overactive, what muscles are underactive. So knowing your muscles is super, super important. You don't need to know all the super tiny muscles, but there are a few, and you'll notice as you're studying and reading through the book that they use a lot of the same muscles for examples. So if you don't know where those muscles are, it's really hard for you to know what muscles to strengthen and lengthen, and so it just makes it a little difficult if you don't know your muscles. So I learned all my muscles. I also made note cards. I had all of the major words that came up over and over and over and over again in the text, and I made sure that I knew exactly what those words meant, because I figured, if they're showing up more than one time in a book, probably ought to know what they are. So there's a lot of things in here: muscular power, muscular endurance, adherence, extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, flexion, knowing all of those really quickly, because on the test you don't want to worry about knowing what the question's asking. You want to know how to answer it, and these are the things that you need to know how to answer the question correctly. But yeah, so I made note cards. I flipped through them every single day to make sure that I knew exactly what I needed to be studying, and I knew what I was talking about. I'm kind of an organized nerd, so throughout every chapter I outline the chapter. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but once you get to the end of this book, the book's pretty big. You don't want to have to think, wow, I wonder what the important things were from chapter 1, okay? So pretty much I outlined every chapter. I put my vocab words in here. I wrote down some examples, so then I could look back at this and say, oh, chapter 1 was over motivation and adherence and intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, self-efficiency. I could look back at all those things and know exactly what the chapter was about without having to reread the entire chapter. So I had all of that written in a notebook, and I actually, on the way to the test, because our test that I took was about an hour away to take it, so all the way there I studied, and it was just kind of a quick refresh of all the major points of the test in my notebook. So I had that too. So I'm going to kind of flip through some of this and highlight some parts that I think were super important, and I'm actually going to refer to my notebook. So chapter 1, really scope of practice. There was a lot of questions about scope of practice. It's just know your area, know what you're qualified and what you're not qualified to tell a client. And if you're not qualified, you're not qualified. And it's honestly 100 times better to tell a client, hey, I don't know the answer to that. I think I need to refer you to someone who does. Because if you make up something or you don't know what you're talking about, it's definitely going to come back negatively on you, whether it's a physical harm or it's just they find out the answer's wrong. Okay, so know your scope of practice, know exactly what you are qualified to do, and just follow those guidelines. Chapter 2 talks a lot about motivation and adherence. So the likelihood that somebody will stick to a program. You've got your motivations. Those are super important. Those come up quite a few times. Strategies to help motivation you should know. Feedback, you definitely need to know. Goal setting, that comes up a lot as well. Goal setting is big. Chapter 3 is your stages of client-trainer relationship. That will definitely come up on the test. So you need to know those 4 stages of your client-trainer relationship. Stages of learning will come up for sure. That it's also in chapter 3. Chapter 4 has ACE fitness model. That's important. It'll come up. You have your 4 stages, your 4 phases of your fitness model. Even know the little subcategories of those fitness model. So function are your stability and your mobility phase. Health is phase 2, so your movement training, load training, and then performance training. You need to know all of those. Chapter 6 is report and investigation. Those are definitely important. It also has your stages of change. Those don't come up a whole lot, but they're probably important just to know as a fitness professional. I did have a few questions about blood pressure. I do have my biology degree. I had a few health classes throughout college, so I knew my blood pressure stuff pretty well, but it was nice to have just a refresher of, what your pre-hypertensions, hypertensions are, those numbers. The numbers do pop up. You will be asked, you have a client this age with this blood pressure, what are their risk factors? So you do need to know the hypertensions and pre-hypertension numbers. Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is one that you need to memorize front and back. Probably majority of my test came from chapter 7. I read chapter 7 probably 6 times. I'm not even kidding you. Most of the YouTube videos that I watched that were helping people study for this test, they said chapter 7 was really big. So I studied chapter 7 very much, and they were right. Chapter 7 is all about assessments. So your postural problems, fixing those, what they are, know the words for your postural problems, okay? You need to know what a flat back is, what a sway back is, because they will ask you how to fix them, what causes them. You need to know those. This is where all of your flexibility tests, your postural deviations, your movement screenings are. You need to know all of those. I actually have all of them in all these sticky notes, are all the movement or posture exams. So I have, the bend and lift screen. I have my hurdle step test. I have my shoulder press stabilizations. I have all of that. I have it all marked. It was all on there. You need to know it all. As a fitness professional, you should be able to administer all these exams and know exactly what you're looking for. McGill's torso was on there. The stork stand was on there. All of these were on there, and you need to know what they are and how to administrate them, what you're looking for, what's out of the ordinary. You need to know all of it because it will be on there. And even if it's not on there, it is important for a fitness professional to know. So chapter 7. You read the book, read chapter 7 again. Just read chapter 7. Chapter 8, I didn't have a whole lot out of. It was differences between muscular endurance, muscular strength, aerobic power, that kind of stuff. It had a few tests in it still. Look over chapter 8 a little bit. It's got body fat compositions, body fat percentages. I guess I did have a little bit out of here, more than I thought, but look over chapter 8 as well, as far as the body composition assessment part. I did have a question on that. Your cardio fitness. Yeah, chapter 8 you should definitely look over. Cardio fitness testing. Guys, your VT2 threshold test, all of that's in there. You need to know how to administrate all of those. That was important. Chapter 9 is stability and mobility. I didn't have a whole lot of questions on stability and mobility, but I did know all of them. I had note cards on all of them. It's like your ankle is mobility, your foot stability. Just know what those joints do, what they're there for. Chapter 8 was resistance training. Or chapter 10 was resistance training. I didn't have a whole lot from there. You do need to know your zones 1, 2, and 3. So your VT1, VT2, and above. Those were on there. They were more like how you have this client. What does this client need to do? Are they ready for this? Common injuries. I didn't have a whole lot of that. But yeah. Chapter 7 and Chapter 8 are probably the heaviest hit. So I would look definitely Chapter 7, but Chapter 8 as well. Some other stuff that I did outside of just the book, test.com. Test.com has a ton of the ACE tests, and they are written in the same format that your test will be written in. The first time I took one of the tests on test.com, I did not do well, and it made me freak out that I did not do well. But as you take them, you kind of get used to the way that ACE words their tests. They don't necessarily word them tricky. They're just in greater detail than you are used to, probably. So using those tests on test.com really helped me study and helped me realize, how things were going to be worded and how I needed to analyze the question to answer it. I also got 2 of the tests from ACE themselves. And the first one I, once again, did not do very well on, and then I turned around and did the other one about a week later and aced it. It was great. Once you learn how the questions are written, it comes more naturally. From people that I know that have taken the ACE test, they have more problems with it because of the wording of the questions more than not knowing the material. So I do highly recommend that you go and look up those either on test.com or get the test from ACE themselves so you can see what you're up against before you get there and you're like, woo, what is that? But yeah, so those are some of the study things that I did, how I studied, what I studied. I studied quite a bit. I work a full-time job right now, and I studied after work every day. So it wasn't a whole lot. I know a lot of people take off work to study for the test. I really didn't think it was that bad. I just prepared for as long as I could, and then once I got there, it was just kind of pulling it all back out. Take your time. It is a very long test, but I really didn't think it was that terrible. When you do go to take the test, I took mine in a testing center. You can't have anything with you. I actually was in a little cubicle by myself. I put my headphone earbud things in, with the little squishy ones that go in your ear. I put those in, and I literally didn't look up from my computer until my test was over, and I had no idea that the entire room was full of people by the time I took the test. Was done with it, but I was just totally zoned in. It's really not that hard. It didn't take me that long, honestly. I think it took me an hour and a half. And you know your results right then and there. I hit show my results, and you have to take a survey. Be ready for the survey. I was so nervous to hit submit. I hit submit, and it was like, oh, well, take the survey. Then you have to take the survey and hit submit again. And then you get to see your test results. But I saw that I passed right after I hit submit, so I knew right then and there whether I passed or not. And they print you out a little piece of paper that shows, you were efficient in these areas. This area maybe you needed some work on, but you passed. And then ACE sends you your certificate and your ACE card with your number on it and everything, and you're good to go. After that, you can specialize in things, which I did, and continue getting your education through fitness. But yeah, I didn't think it was terrible. Hopefully you don't think it's terrible, and hopefully you do a good job. I hope these tips kind of helped you out a little bit on maybe where you need to study or what chapters to focus on, or maybe even some tips on how to study. But anyway, I hope it helped.